Hi there, and welcome to the HDFS Career Podcast. My name is Dr. Lori Bullock, and I'm an assistant professor in human development and family studies at MSU. I teach several courses in the department, and one of them is HDFS 270, which introduces students to this major and to the field of family science. Quite often, students who are new to our major are not quite sure of the career options they have with a degree in human development and family studies. Some students know exactly what they want to do, and some students aren't quite sure and can sometimes feel overwhelmed. And there are other students who are in our major but plan to pursue a career in the healthcare field. These would be students who know that they want to be nurses or doctors or child life specialists, occupational therapists, and so on. The purpose of this podcast is to bring professionals on from many different areas. Each episode, I invite a professional from the community who has a background in HDFS or one that is similar to HDFS. I'm so excited you joined the podcast, and I hope today's episode will be helpful to you as you consider your career options. Okay. Hello, HDFS students and colleagues. I'm honored and excited for you to meet today's guest on the podcast. Her name is Dr. Haiden Perkins, and she is an assistant professor at Arizona State University. So a little bit more about her. A little bit more about her. Dr. Perkins received her Bachelor of Science degree from Arizona State University in Family and Human Development in 2018. She then went on to receive her PhD in 2023 in Child Development with a certificate in college teaching from Michigan State University. She is now an assistant teaching professor of positive psychology in the psychology department at Arizona State University's West Valley campus. Her research history focuses on resilience in children who have experienced adversity and trauma, as well as the role of ecological supports in resilient behavior after experiences of childhood adversity and trauma. As an instructor, Dr. Perkins places emphasis on a collaborative learning environment, as well as using inclusive teaching practices and the development of career skills through coursework. Dr. Perkins, thank you so much for joining the podcast today and being able to share your experiences. I'm excited to have you and excited for my students to learn from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So we'll go ahead and get started with questions then. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your current role?
Yeah, so as you just introduced in my bio, I am an assistant teaching professor at Arizona State, and my overarching area is positive psychology, but I teach a handful of psychology classes. So I currently work on a 4-4 schedule. So it means I had 4 classes in the fall. I've got 4 classes that I'm teaching now. And that's just really what I get to focus on is being in the classroom, engaging with students. I teach social psych, interpersonal relationships, a positive psych course, as well as learning and motivation
Awesome.
currently.
Yeah, that's awesome. They sound like really fun and interesting courses.
Yeah, it's been a good start to the semester so far. I think there are going to be some fun classes.
Yeah, good, good. Can you tell us or walk us through what a typical day or week looks like for you?
Yeah, so particularly because I'm on, that heavy class schedule, tend to go into the office I do go into the office 4 days a week for my classes because I have the classes Monday through Thursday. And then I generally still work on my PowerPoints, working on lectures, all of the side stuff that goes on outside of the actual classroom time, either in my office or at home, just a lot of kind of work on your own time. And then Fridays are generally meeting days or just catching up on things that I've fallen behind on in the week. But yeah, so I just really focus a lot on that teaching time or prepping for classes. But it's a really nice schedule outside of those set course times. I get a lot of flexibility as far as when I'm prepping, what I'm prepping. So it's really just teaching and then preparing to teach some more, and then also service stuff. I'm on a committee where we're going to be hiring some new faculty in our department in the coming school years. So I've been working on getting those like getting the call out and going to start reviewing those applications soon. So that's going to be a new fun process that I get to go through soon that I haven't gotten to experience yet. So I'm looking forward to checking out that side of things.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're gonna be kind of on the other side of the table or on the
Yeah, it was just, years-ish ago that I was being the one interviewed, and now here we are.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting how much you learn too when you're on the other side.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm very excited to kind of get the back view of what goes on behind the scenes outside of the application process. So that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. Um, so my next question, because your undergrad is in basically HDFS, just like our undergrad program,
Right.
and then you went in grad school into child development. And so, can you talk about what drew you to that concentration, and what you want to do with that?
Yeah. So yeah, my undergrad was in family and human development, and then yeah, went into grad school and focused on that child development. And it really started pretty early on. I kind of bounced around the first few semesters of undergrad. Actually applied as a psych student and moved to sociology. And this family and human development program that I got my degree in, it's not a super common. It's usually the sociology or the psychology. So I actually didn't even know that family and human was something that ASU offered or that was a degree option. But then I started taking classes in that specific area just as elective to support my sociology degree at the time, and just really fell in love with that specific focus on the actual like family interactions and particularly the development of the child. And I think we're all, at least in like our area in the HDFS type fields, we all draw inspiration from our own life experiences. And that's what really drew me in, was going into these classes, and the teacher would say something and all of a sudden it would connect to something that I had experienced in my life. I'm like, oh, that's why that happened. Oh, that makes so much sense. And a lot of it was, my brother and I are very opposite, same parents. And so it was really intriguing for me to think about why I reacted this way to something and my brother reacted this way. So I just became just really intrigued by it. So it was really mostly just based on a lot of interest. And then once I really started to understand myself, wanting to just explore that more and understand how it worked in an overarching concept. And then when I was a senior in undergrad, I got to actually teach a class that was for freshman undergrads that were like new to the university. And so that was my first teaching, lecturing at the university level experience. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I knew immediately that that's what I wanted to do. And then I already loved my, family and human development, child development experiences so far. So then it kind of just mended well together that I was going to go for the PhD so that I could be in the university and then focus on that child development, psychological, sociology area type stuff, because that's just where I was passionate.
Wow, that's awesome. So you were an undergraduate TA then, it sounds like. So you taught course a class kind of under the supervision of a faculty member?
Ish. So we had overarching topics that we had to cover. And we met on a weekly basis to talk about the next week's lectures, what everybody was planning to do. But I got to make my own lectures. I got to pick exactly what content we did and how we covered it. So actually, there was a lot more freedom than you would probably expect for an actual still undergraduate student to get. But it was really awesome to get that creative freedom because again, we had some guidance and some rules that we were supposed to go by, but how we implemented it and how we interacted with our students, we had a lot more flexibility. So it was really neat. It was really a miniature version of what I was going to end up doing in the long haul. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like it kind of solidified your interest in,
yeah,
where you wanted to go, which direction.
right. And that was, yeah, definitely very affirming for me. And it's led me, experiences that I've had that I wasn't as confident, didn't enjoy as much. And then this experience that I loved so much has led me to, all the undergrads and students that I work with who are still figuring out their direction. That's like my biggest tip of advice for them is to get a taste of what that career is actually going to look like. Cause you can go to the classes, you can study it, you can all this sort of stuff. But until you actually, get to dip your toes in and see what the job's actually like, just warning. I think it's the best thing that you can do to get a little taste of it before, especially going to grad school, getting an entire PhD. You don't want to go end up in that job and be like, oh wait, this isn't actually what I want to do. So it's great to be able to have that experience. Be like, yep, this is it. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And then you came to MSU and joined the child development graduate program.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was that transition into grad school like for you?
It was definitely a challenge. So I was the quote unquote guinea pig group as far as MSU offering the straight through program. So I was in the first cohort that skipped our masters and just went straight from our undergrad experiences straight into PhD, which I think was a blessing and a curse at the same time. It was definitely, great to get to dive into just kind of the pros of a PhD program and to get to dive in. I loved that the fact that we were, different from undergrad where you're getting to focus on what you want to be focusing on. You're not taking your gen eds. Everything's kind of for a goal. It was definitely a little bit challenging, of course, because I, for one, did not have a ton of research experience going into it, particularly as an undergrad and not having my master's. But I was lucky enough that I had a very supportive advisor who was, totally willing to help me through everything and kind of help me pick up those slacking pieces from not having that master's and really help get me on track. So I'd say the first year was definitely a little bit tricky, just trying to kind of play catch up as far as the things that I didn't have from not having a master's. But once I got into the swing of things, of course, a grad degree is never going to be easy, but it definitely, after that transition of kind of getting my stepping, figuring out what the differences were between grad school and undergrad, things started to at least get to like a little bit of a smoother pattern.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, about that difference from going right from undergrad to a PhD program, and
Yeah,
that is it's a big step. And
it
there are,
is.
yeah, there are a lot more programs that are starting for that, are starting to do that.
Yeah,
So I'm glad you talked about what that challenge was for you on
yeah.
that.
Well, and I think it's an incredible opportunity. It saves you time. And then, being real on a, real level, it also saves you money, which was a huge deal for me. I probably wouldn't be here today had I not gotten into the straight through program because I just was one of those students that I don't think I probably could have afforded a master's. So it was a really wonderful opportunity for me to get to pursue that higher education that I might not have gotten to do otherwise. It's wild to think about where I'd be today had that not happened.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's great. So then it sounds like you got involved with a research project then, um, as a, I don't know if you had a research assistantship, but probably at least under somebody, one of the labs in the
In
department.
the beginning,
Yeah.
so actually, my first semester, my actual assignment was I worked at our child development lab. So I worked there for my first school year, which in itself was wonderful, getting to have kind of some hand-on experience and learning those best practices. And then I was just involved in my advisor's research lab on the side. That wasn't a part of my requirements. I wasn't doing anything there specifically, but started to get to know their research, help out in different areas and start to explore kind of what was out there as far as even particularly their studies and things that I might be able to pull off of and start doing my own research. So yeah, I started kind of getting to slowly work my way into the research side of things.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it, just kind of figuring out what's going on in your place
Yeah.
in it.
Like I said, I was kind of jumping off the deep end, going straight from undergrad to grad school. And it was kind of a semi late decision to go to grad school. So I definitely was a little bit of a fish out of water at first. But yeah, it was great to explore their data, hear about their research, kind of sit on the sidelines a little bit at first, just to kind of get my head around everything and then be able to start pursuing my own interests as I started to understand things better.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And then somewhere along the line, this college teaching certificate came in. How did that come about?
Well, so they talked to us about that in several of our different intro meetings, things like that. It comes up as options that are available to you. I believe it's in our handbook as well. I'm not sure. So I can't remember exactly the first time I heard about it, but like I said, I always knew from the beginning that I wanted to be an instructor. I wanted to be a professor. I knew I wanted to be teaching. So honestly, it just kind of felt like an obvious, of course, you're going to pursue
Yeah.
this because it's just going to benefit you. It's just going to make you it's going to look good on the CV. It's going to be great for me just in developing skills and abilities as an instructor in general. So for me, it was just like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to do that if that's an opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like a good one too, to do that. So what kinds of things did you do for that certificate? What were the requirements? I don't know if
So
you
you have to
remember.
take, there's a list of courses that you have to take, or a lot of courses you have to take, but a list of course options. And so you have to take one course from that list. So the one I took was about teaching online, which was ironic because it was either the semester before COVID or the semester that we all went online for COVID. So I was like perfectly timed where I was getting this course that was all about teaching online, how to, make it successful, how to engage your students right as I was being thrown into online teaching. So it was actually great timing. And I just happened to pick it as the course that I wanted to take even before before we knew COVID was going to happen. I just got lucky that that's what I had picked to choose. So I took that course. And then there are a handful of different overarching focus areas, which I can't remember off the top of my head. With my contact information, I can give you the website that I created for it. And that shows all of the documentation, all the things that I had to go through. But basically you just engage in a handful of different, just like lectures, seminars, and you kind of develop ideas, you develop your own work from those projects, and you write a reflection about what you learned, how it's going to influence your teaching going forward, kind of the products that you've created. And then there is like a 2-day training in general. And then you culminate all of this into a final online portfolio that has like your CV, it has the class you took, and it has each one of those focus areas and your full introduction, reflection, the materials that you're supposed to provide, like actual like tangible like items. So like pictures of what you wrote or like the plan you made, pictures of the syllabi that you create. And so you just document all the stuff that you've done throughout the courses, throughout the trainings into this overarching portfolio online.
Oh, that's cool. Sounds like a great
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. And then I think just if I know a little bit of your history, you got to put some of that to practice because you were a TA and did instructor of record for a couple of courses, right?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of was give and take on both sides of things. So I know like part of my portfolio, I just reflected on actual teaching experiences of things that I had gotten to do in the classroom and how I just reflected on how I'd grown and learned from my actual hands-on teaching experiences. So yeah, so my starting the second year, so I did the child development lab my first year, but then starting second year, I was a TA during the school year, and then I actually taught the course myself as the instructor of record online over the summer. And so I continued that same process for the next, 3 years. And then so TA during the summer or school year, instructor of record during the summer. And then finally my final year, I actually was the instructor of record for a different class, but got to be the instructor of record in the classroom during the school year. And then again, taught online over the summer.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. And you must have done well because as I was talking to you before we started recording, my students in HDFS 270 last semester specifically asked me to interview you. So you must
That's
have
so
really
sweet
made a
of
mark.
them.
Yeah.
I really hope, I mean, I love to think that I did. I mean, it's just, I'm so passionate about it. It's my favorite thing about it all is just getting to interact with the students and, wanting it. You basically, I think about all the things that I experienced when I was going through undergrad, what I loved, what was hard for me, what I didn't like, and just really try to play off of those to make it, the most enjoyable experience for them. I want it to be what I would have wanted when I was in class. So I love to hear that they seem to have enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps when you know you've made a mark, then you
Yeah.
feel like you probably must have taught well, that they, hopefully learned a lot and
Yeah.
but they felt a connection. And so
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah. No, I actually had one of my students, my first semester of my last year, so the first time I was instructor of record, ended up becoming my mentee in the HDFS mentor mentee program the next semester after she wasn't my student. And now, I mean, we still very much hold that relationship of mentor mentee, almost become like big sister, little sister at this point. So it's really neat how those relationships can develop and unfold over the years.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's great. What recommendations for you have if students might be interested in pursuing either a graduate degree in child development or going along to the same career interest you had of teaching in college?
Yeah, so I think what I learned at least is, especially if you're planning on going to our one university, to a research heavy university, is to get involved as early as you can as far as research goes. Just start dipping your toes in, getting to experiencing that, and starting to explore what areas and what focus areas you might be interested in. That was definitely one of my biggest struggles, is that I had all of these big ideas, all of these things that I was interested in. And my instructors and my advisor would ask me like what I wanted to study and what I was interested in researching in grad school. And I would start talking about, okay, you just explained an entire career plus some. I was like, oh, okay. So it really took me some time to start to narrow in and focus in on what I wanted to do, which kind of, put me behind a little bit because it took some time to kind of hone in. So I think the more that they can figure out exactly what it is that they're wanting to study, what they're wanting to pursue, then the quicker they can kind of get moving on that process. And so if you start thinking about that in undergrad or as you're starting to work on this application process, that's really important. And then on top of that, just really thinking about making connections and reaching out to your professors, forming those relationships so that when the time comes for applications, you have those letters of rec, you have those people to lean on just for guidance through the process. As far as it's a big process, it's really complicated. And so having those people to kind of guide you through that process, I got really lucky that I did exactly that. I had a professor who was doing exactly what I wanted to do. She had a degree in child development. She was teaching. And so I asked her, it was when I was still an undergrad at ASU, and I asked them if I could just do an informational interview with them just to get an idea of the process, what I would need to be doing, what it looked like. And during that informational interview, we just really bonded, and they ended up being my right hand super guide throughout the entire process. Went from this informational interview to them walking me through my applications, the letters of interest, all that. I would not be here without them either. So just that one question of can I talk to you for a few minutes ended up setting up the stage for me having this great support system all the way through.
That's awesome. Really great of that professor to do that. And
Yeah.
just, it sounds like she was a really good mentor through
Yeah,
that
I've been
process.
very lucky to have some great mentors throughout the years.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, and let's see, I'm looking for my next question. Um, were there, in the process of developing your career, have there been certain organizations that you've networked with or, been a part of to help grow your career and growing your network?
Not particular organizations, but more just staying in touch and keeping up with individuals throughout the years. So, for example, I stayed in touch with that advisor who helped me get into grad school. I also had a professor who I was very close with when I was her student. Just she was a great professor, very much inspirational to who I aim to be as a professor. I'm still work with her a lot today. But I kept in touch with her. I had her guest lecture in my courses when I was teaching at MSU. She still guest lectures now. She ended up being one of my letters of recommendation when I was applying for ASU, and she works for ASU. So that was a great connection to have. And just, trying to, show my commitment, show my care and concern. And I think that the individuals that I've worked with over the years, they've all been within, my university and then where I was working, but, kind of just trying to form as many connections and relationships and just having a really great support system through the process.
That's great. Good information. Good to
Yeah.
know. Um, And then I guess I just have a couple of questions left. Thinking about, transitioning from grad school into your current position, what was that like? And was there a big shift you had to make for work-life balance?
I think, interesting. So can you repeat it one more time?
Sure. We'll start with the first part. What was
Yeah.
that transition like from graduate school into your current teaching position? Was it a big transition for you?
It was definitely a big transition just in going from, I was only teaching one class to going to teaching four, which is, a lot to manage. But for me, it was a very enjoyable process because I was no longer a student. I was no longer, creating work for something else. It was doing what I wanted to be doing. I was pursuing these topics. I love, in general, curriculum development can be complicated, but I love developing curriculum for courses, coming up with the assignments, starting to explore all these different fun things and just trying to make them as creative and enjoyable for students as possible. So I had a bit of a hectic summer, which made things a little bit difficult in that transition, but that was just, personal issues. But honestly, it was a really enjoyable transitioning experience to go from being a student, kind of having, grad student restrictions, limitations, and what I was able to do to just this I remember emailing with who is my like mentor now, and he's same position, just been here a lot longer than me. And emailing him and be like, hey, do I have to get approval for this? And what are the requirements for this? And just all this like grad student headspace of needing to make sure everything's good with everyone. And him being just like, you can really do whatever you want. He's like, if you want to make it really similar to what's been done in the past, you can, but you can have as much creative freedom as you want with your courses. You get to pick the textbooks, you get to pick what your like your assignments, and it's oh, this is so fun. Like it was just wonderful getting to have that creative freedom.
I remember feeling like that too.
Yeah.
Getting that same advice. It's like, what? Wait, I can really do what I want.
Yeah, it's a little scary. You're like, okay, well then all of a sudden, like, now if this goes wrong, it's my fault. It's not
Yeah.
that somebody else told me to do this. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking, and yeah, definitely takes a little bit. I think that's been the biggest struggle is my organization and just trying to, because normally I only had to focus on one class. This is what we're doing in this class. And there's a lot of overlap in my classes, and then many things that are different as well. So just trying to make sure that my brain's transitioning from, okay, in this class you're doing this and they have these assignments, but then when you go to this class, then you have to do that. So just a lot more as far as making sure I'm staying focused on which class is doing what, and all of that is a little bit to figure out, but we're slowly getting the hang of it.
Just to confide, one of my biggest fears is that I won't show up to a class in the right time. I'll be thinking about
Yep.
a different class, and so I don't show up to the right class at the right time. It hasn't happened, fortunately, but it's like a fear of mine.
Yeah, no, I screenshot my schedule and have it like in the photos in my phone. And honestly, last semester, pretty much all the way until like the last couple of weeks, I was still confirming before I opened that door. I'd be standing outside the classroom and would pull up the picture and be like, this is right, right? Yep, okay. Because I did not want to be that professor that like interrupted a class or like walked into the wrong room. So yeah, I did not trust myself to be in the right classroom. I had to double check every single time.
Yeah.
But I was talking about how proud I was of there's several students that I had last semester that are in classes this semester as well. And so I walked in and was like, guys, I didn't even have to check this time. I made it to the right class, like second day of class, and I was already going to the right place. I'm knowing the campus. I'm getting it figured out.
But they were so proud of you.
Yes, they were. It was great.
Yeah, yeah, it is nice. And it's nice too when you get to teach the same students in more than one class too. You get to know them a little bit.
Yes, I mean, yeah, really great students and very, very comforting when, you dive into a new semester, especially with those two classes that are new teachers for me this semester out of my four. Just having those familiar faces is always kind of nurturing and calming. And, they've got their chose to be with me again, which feels good. So always nice to see their smiling faces.
Yeah, it is nice. That's awesome. The next part of that question was work-life balance. How has that been for you?
I'd say it's actually a lot better now than it was in grad school. I mean, I feel like in some ways it's better, in some ways it's worse, I guess. I had my undergrad social system here. Um so, being back with that larger friend group and larger social system, there is a little bit more kind of just being like restricted. So I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but just having to control myself and make sure I'm still prioritizing and getting work done and stuff. But I think it's the flexibility of academia is very helpful because you kind of can do things on your own schedule. You have, certain things that have to be done by a certain time, but it's not like I have to be in an office from 9 to 5 and then, have these very specific set times. So you can kind of rearrange things around what fits best for your needs and your schedule. So yeah, I think in some ways it's been more difficult, but in some ways, again, like having more of this creative freedom. I'm not in classes as far as like taking my own classes. I'm not writing a dissertation, which, takes a lot of your time. So I've actually felt a little bit more relief actually going on into my career, which I wasn't sure which way it would go, but I think the work-life balance has actually gotten better now.
Yeah, good, good. I think just based, just looking back from my experience, grad school experience can be consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like you said, you're taking your own courses and then all of the other requirements outside of courses. So it consumes a lot of your time. And then suddenly you've got, just their courses you're teaching. And so you can add in some life back to your schedule.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of, for me, I had that difficult transition of letting go of the consuming part and saying, okay, I can make sure I have time for
Yes.
this, that.
Yeah, I do. I have been dealing with, even in grad school, if I had time where I like actually finish what I need to finish for the day or whatever, like I always, there's always something else you could be doing. And so I deal with some of that guilt of, I finished the PowerPoints that I was supposed to finish. I've had several nights, especially so I had a busy summer. So last semester I had several nights that, were 2 a.m. I was still finishing up lectures for the next day. And so then this week I was making lectures, and again, like 2 of them are repeats, so it's a lot easier. And so it actually was like 11 o'clock and I was already had everything prepped. And I was like, I felt guilty, like getting ready for bed. I was like, I should be doing more. Like, is it really okay? What am I forgetting? Like, there's something else I should be doing. And so, yeah, it's really hard to just let yourself have relaxation time. But that was also something that I tried very, very hard to hold on to in grad school. I was very determined not to let it take my, I'm a very, as a social person, extreme extrovert. I love being with my friends and socializing. So that was something that I was very committed to in grad school, was not letting it overcome everything. And what I learned and what I've had, talked to people about as far as it, is you kind of just have to pick what's more important to you. So like for me, I'd rather stay up super late Monday through Friday and then have my weekends completely off. I tried to make sure that I was, except for, finals or whatever, that I had my weekends free. And then there's other people that I know that need to have some time every single night. So they would work on the weekends, but they always kept their evenings open. So you kind of just have to figure out what works for your schedule, where you get your peace and your mindfulness, and what's going to be kind of tangible for the long term for you, and then prioritize that way. So, either staying up late or making sure you work on the weekends, but finding those gaps of time to be in the prime hours where you need them.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I
Okay.
can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are kind of early in your career. What do you see for yourself in the future?
Well, continue to move forward, of course, as far as eventually a handful of years down the road, we'll look at moving up to being an associate teaching professor and then, full professor. I'm also, there's been discussion, getting into this role. I'd love to get into more of a supervising director type role as far as teaching goes. I'm currently the only like teaching faculty in my positive psych area. So I know that there's some, goals and plans for moving forward with that. Just hopefully continuing to stay in teaching and moving up into places where I kind of am overseeing the teaching within this positive psych area. And my goal is to just, kind of be maintaining that teaching excellence. It's like my colleagues in my positive psych area are incredible researchers doing wonderful studies. And so I'll just be there to hopefully support them as far as teaching goes and help them with teaching standards and making sure that we're, top tier in all of those areas. But yeah, just hoping to keep moving forward with the teaching, hoping to stay in Arizona for a while. I luckily think that there's a lot of room for growth for me right here, because my department's like, particularly with positive psych, is pretty new. Like last few years is really when positive psych came to this campus. So I'm lucky to be getting in kind of early, and hopefully we'll get to grow with the program as it grows.
That's awesome. That sounds like a wonderful plan.
Yeah.
That's great. So I think I finally covered all my questions. I was kind of got lost in it because some of them you answered, and so didn't need to ask them, and which
I'm
is
really good at
always
going off on
great.
tangents.
No, that's great. It's just kind of how the conversation goes, and so
Yeah.
that's not a problem at all. So thank you so much for making time in your schedule today to talk with me
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
yeah, learn from the experiences and stuff like that. And so I know our students are going to get a lot out of that.
Oh, good. I hope so.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining today's episode of the HDFS Career Podcast. I hope you enjoyed meeting Dr. Haiden Perkins and learning about her career journey. You can find her contact information in the episode description if you would like to reach out to her. She would be happy to answer any questions you may have about her career journey. Please join me again soon for interviews with other professionals to learn about the many options that you have available to you after you pursue this degree. Enjoy the rest of your day.